Welcome to a conversation with Alianza and two leaders from Puerto Rico who across the waves share the common ground of helping women find hope and care as they navigate abuse. The message is we see you, we hear you, we believe you, given the consistent domestic abuse faced by Latinas here in our community and in Puerto Rico. The facts are clear. We need action now. Lives are at stake. Our children are at risk. Hope is possible only if we disrupt our denial. Let's talk about it. Let's do something about it. It's time for the conversation. Welcome to Holyoke Media. Today is our INSTUDIO program, and we're happy to feature Alianza. And we actually have Carmen Nieves with us, and she will tell us a little bit about what goes on there and why we need to know. We also with Natalia Munoz of Holyoke Media, who makes this wonderful opportunity to have these dialogues. So Carmen, tell me about Alianza.
Thank you so much for having me. I have the honor and privilege of being the executive director of Alianza, formerly Women Shelter Compañeras. We are a domestic violence agency that helps survivors, men, women, and children that are experiencing unsafe relationships, abusive relationships, and harmful relationships. We provide services in all manners for participants that we call them and not clients. We average about 200 hotline calls a month. We house about 35 people, whether that's hotels or in our shelters or an off-site location. We have about 100 people a month that we provide services to in the court system as they try to get restraining orders. Anything that a survivor needs to be able to flee a harmful relationship is what we do at Alianza.
Great, great. And tell me, I know you have some events coming up, but let's talk about what's happening with Puerto Rico. I believe Natalia will be
Yes, Carmen,
following up.
the violence against women in Puerto Rico, as you know, it is horrific. It is, I mean, I don't want to say it was ever in control. It's every day. There's a woman or two who gets killed viciously. It's not, I mean, it's not like, oh, she got strangled to death. No, she got strangled, then she got shot 30 times. Then she got thrown in the water, or then she got burned. There's such violence against women in Puerto Rico. Where is that coming from, that lack of vocabulary that leads, in most cases, the boyfriends or the husbands to literally end the lives of another person?
That is a great question. We can ask the same here in our state of Massachusetts as well. Puerto Rico is 2 times smaller than we are, has less of a population than we are in Massachusetts. And I believe that it is not just the lack of resources like we have here. It's a whole conversation that Puerto Rico needs to have as well. I would not want to tell Puerto Rico what to do when we're trying to do the same here. We are inviting guests that we have to one of our events, and I'll talk a little about that in a minute. But what I'm hoping that we understand is that we see the same issues here in Massachusetts as we do in Puerto Rico. And at Alianza, we felt that we have this common ground. We believe that no one deserves that abuse. No one deserves to live that way. We all deserve to be happy, healthy relationships. And I wanted to make that connection. And I'm concerned mostly that those here understand that it's not that we're not paying attention to the domestic violence that happens in Massachusetts. It's that we want to be able to help survivors everywhere. And Puerto Rico is where we're starting, is what we're doing to be able to reach that.
You're expanding your services or your connections to Puerto Rico?
We are. We're trying to provide a safe space when those that flee from Puerto Rico come here. And we're also trying to provide a better understanding when we send someone, when a survivor wants to be able to flee to Puerto Rico as well.
And because there's all this violence, how are young men being taught to resolve their rage in other ways that does not include being abusive verbally or physically, being threatening. What do young men and men in general need to learn who are in these relationships where the woman is frightened of them?
Right. So again, another great question. This is a learned behavior, so it can be unlearned. And children who witness domestic violence are 3 times more likely to perpetrate it as well. There's a great organization, it's called A Call to Change here in Massachusetts. And they help and talk about how to hold someone accountable, right? These are our neighbors, our family members who are causing harm to others. And it's not just men causing the harm, there are women that also cause harm. So we have to find a way to compassionately hold them accountable. We have laws, it's taboo. There's so much that we've been doing this work for 40 years and it's still happening. We're still getting these calls and we're still happening. So we need to start these conversations of how to prevent it. I really don't want us to talk about survivors and victims anymore, right? Because that implies that it was something that someone did. No, there's nothing you could have done to deserve that type of abuse. So if you're living that now, please know that this is not your fault and you deserve more. And we are going to try to shift the conversation to hold those accountable. That was a great question. How do we do that? How do we compassionately hold people accountable?
And perhaps that ties into the 2 events you're going to have.
Yes.
One is more of a targeted conversation, and the other one is more for the community. So tell us about that.
Yes, so on October 19th, we will have an event from 4 to 6, and it's on our Race Street office. And we will hope that people will come out and share what resources that we have, and we also have some community members that will also be sharing resources. It's a way, we do it every year. We've been doing it for 40 years to raise awareness. It's a space that you can come learn about the issue, learn about the resources, learn about who we are at Alianza and my leadership. We have board of directors, a wonderful staff. It's a time for the community to come out and support those that are living with domestic violence. That's something that you can do, that you can come to an event to get some information, to pass it along to someone else. Come to an event to talk to someone about what you're experiencing. Come to the event to talk about your neighbor, your loved one that is suffering in silence right now.
Yes, and this is so powerful, and we so appreciate your leadership on this. And for me, that wonderful phrase that you have, we hear you, we see you, we believe you, that to me is the heartbeat of what you're doing. And you want anyone out there who has an issue that needs to be resolved to connect with Alianza.
Yes, call our hotline 536-1628. We take away all of the judgment. You don't have to explain to us how you got to calling us, the courage that it would take to call a hotline because what's going on in your intimate relationship. All we need to do is find out how this person is causing you harm, how much power and control does this person have, and how lethal is this person, because we at Alianza believe that one day this person can kill you.
Yes. Well, I thank you for sharing. Please take us out.
Yes, my last question for you, Carmen, is, as you said, this has been going, you have been doing this for 40 years. And this is an issue that is millennia. No, it's not just in Puerto Rico. Are some communities harder hit by domestic violence than others? What is the root cause? Is it the injustice in society?
So there are
What
many vulnerable populations. Our BIPOC population, our gay lesbian population. There are our immigrant undocumented survivors as well. So there are so many vulnerable populations that we're trying to serve. I think that the question I would sort of want to turn, not to take your question, is how is this happening in front of all of us? How are we not, again, holding those accountable?
That's a great question. How is it that we're not holding those accountable? Because when we think of a restraining order, that's a good tool, but does it really work? How many times have we read, and she had a restraining order, but he violated it, and that's it. That was the end of her life, or her children, or her children's lives. And it just seems like, what do we need to change in society to make this intolerable? that anybody who, you know, and I know the girls also grow up in the cycle of violence, so maybe they look for partners who also grew up in the cycle of violence, and then they all end up doing the same thing that they know.
Well, I don't know if anybody would look for that, right? To
No,
look
but
to be harmed,
yeah.
but yes, but to recognize it, you're
Yeah.
right. Or to who you can turn to when it happens.
Yes.
That's probably true. Like, you know, you might not have the resources to turn to. But I think we should all look at each other and our values and how we talk about jealousy and possessiveness and anger. And those are excuses to use harm and to use harmful values and abusive behaviors. So it's a much more complicated. And I'm going to make my own plug right now that you've invited us to be able to talk about this weekly. And I would
Yes.
love to have this conversation with you more
We're
in
going to have
depth.
it weekly here at Holyoke Media. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
having me.
Well, thank you all for tuning in, and look forward to that podcast, and come on out to the events.